Hi there, everyone. Sad day. You've been listening to officials in Minnesota provide an update on a devastating and tragic shooting in Minneapolis earlier today. Tragically, 2 children, ages 8 and 10, are dead. At least 17 more people have been injured. We learned just now, though, quote, they are all expected to survive. It happened after a gunman armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol targeted a church that was holding a mass for the young students at the start of a brand new school year. The Minneapolis police chief saying just a couple minutes ago that among the injured, 14 of them are between the ages of 6 and 15. 3 of the injured are adults in their 80s who were attending mass. All of the remaining victims are expected to survive, as we just said. According to police, at around 8:30 a.m. this morning, the gunman approached the church where he began shooting through windows on the side, hitting children and worshipers sitting in pews. Police say that they believe the shooter barricaded at least 2 doors in the church to make it difficult for anyone inside to escape. The shooter, who acted alone, died from a self-inflicted gunshot. Officials say he left a manifesto on YouTube. Today's tragedy is where we start today with MSNBC medical contributor Dr. Vin Gupta. Also joining us, the executive director of Moms Demand Action, Angela Farrell-Zapata, and former acting assistant attorney general for national security at the Department of Justice, MSNBC legal analyst Mary McCord is here. Mary, let me first ask you, with your law enforcement ears and hat on, what you heard from the police chief there about both the sort of disposition of an examination into motive, the safety, I think, which is on the minds of all parents of other kids in schools, especially Catholic schools or schools associated with faith institutions, and where the questions remain.
Yeah, unfortunately, because they are reviewing the manifesto, but we're not providing any details of it, at least at this press conference, it's unclear what the motive was. And of course, that's what the police chief himself said. That's what, of course, so many of us want to know. And it's not just because that could direct the course of what kind of the investigation this is. Of course, the shooter is dead, so there won't be a prosecution of the shooter, but how we think about this. Is this an act of domestic terrorism based on ideological political purposes? Is it a hate crime? But it's also so important for the reasons you indicated, because other congregations, particularly Catholic congregations, need to be prepared. Is this something that's being directed at Catholic churches, Catholic communities, Catholic schools, or is this something that is broader than that? And so that's why getting in right away and executing the search warrants that the police chief mentioned could also help elucidate what the motive was here. And until we have a motive, it keeps people really on tenterhooks trying to figure out exactly what they need to be worried about. And again, I would also say, this is not the time to jump to conclusions about the shooter, right? What his ideological views might have been, what his own personal situation was. And this is the time where, unfortunately, Americans have a habit on social media of speculating about things and sometimes vilifying communities and making assumptions about communities who might be responsible before we have any information that would indicate who is responsible or whether they're part of any particular ideological or other community. So I think right now it's unsatisfying, but we need to just wait, not jump to conclusions, and see what is revealed through these search warrants once they're executed and through a further examination of the manifesto.
One thing we do have, and tragically, this has become a tradition of covering these tragedies, and that is eyewitness testimony. This is a 10-year-old in his own words about what happened today.
It was like shots fired, and then we kind of like got under the pews. It kind of they shot through the stained glass windows, I think, and it was really scary.
What did you do after that?
Well, we waited like 10 to 5 minutes, I don't really know. And then we went to the gym and then the door's locked just to make sure he didn't come. And we waited in the gym for more news, and everyone was okay. Or most people were
Who are
okay.
you?
My friend got hit in the back.
Did he go to the hospital?
Yeah, he went to the hospital.
What went through your mind when you saw that?
I was super scared for him, but I think now he's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get reunited with your parents? And
Yeah, my mom was waiting outside of the church when it happened.
Yeah.
And then
What was it
you-
like seeing her?
I was super happy because, like, I was scared that I wasn't going to see her because I didn't know what was happening, really. I was just in shock.
and was it behind you where it was happening, or in front of you? Just kind of.
It was, like, right beside me. I was, like, 2 seats away from the stained glass windows. So they were, like, the shots were, like, right next to me.
That's scary. Did
Yeah.
You went under the pew after that happened?
Yeah. And
Is
then
that what everyone tried to do?
I think I got, like, gunpowder on my neck. Yeah.
When you heard the shots, what went through your head?
I was like, the first one, I was like, what is that? I thought it was just something. Then when I heard it again, I just ran under the pew. And then I covered my head. My friend Victor, like, saved me, though, because he laid on top of me, but he got hit.
Your friend laid on top of you?
Yeah, and he got hit.
Is this something that you practiced before?
Yeah, we practice it, like, every month, or I don't know. But, yeah, we've never practiced it in the church, though. Only in school, so it was way different.
Was your mom super happy to see you?
Yeah,
Give you a big hug?
What was that hug like?
I just felt like relieved, kind of.
Yeah.
I was very happy.
You're really brave, you know that?
Yeah.
Did you have any brothers and sisters there, or was it just you?
My brother's in the sophomore year of De La Salle. He used to go to Annunciation. He got out early because of it.
And you guys were at like the mass that they do at the beginning
Yeah.
of school?
And then it was like maybe like 3 minutes in, the first shot fired. And then the police were really good because they showed up really quick.
Yeah.
And then, did everybody try to make you feel safe?
Yeah.
But it has to be probably the scariest thing of your life.
Yeah, it was super scary.
What do you want to say to your friend who helped protect you?
He's really brave, and I hope he's good in the hospital.
And what do you want to say to everyone that had to go to the hospital?
I hope you're okay, and I'm praying for you.
I've seen a lot of things. I've never seen that. That was Weston Halsney. Angela Weston, I think, described this better than anyone ever has and ever could. Quote, "I think I got gunpowder on my neck. My friend laid on top of me and saved me, but he got hit." To be a child in America in 2025.
Yeah, first of all, Weston, what a brave young man he was, even being in front of cameras. I am a mother of 4, and my 2 youngest are very close to the ages of the 2 that lives were stolen today. And I took them to school this morning, and, then hours later hear about this tragedy. And it's unfortunate that this public health crisis in this country that now is the leading cause of death for young people. This is almost like a normal. This can't be normal. There's so much that we should be doing for this. But I think first and foremost, I just want to send my heart out to the victims and the survivors of this tragedy that have directly impacted the community that surrounds it. And as a person of faith myself, I am praying, but I'm praying and I'm also acting. I'm praying because we need to stand up and do better. Our children coming back from summer break, coming into days of the start of the new school year, excited to see friends, thinking about, back to school nights or field trips, and now parents to think about bearing children. The burden that is on our children now. They're so accustomed to these active shooter drills and this happening. It's unforgivable. And so I am just, waiting to hear more, but we're going to continue at Moms Demand Action in Everytown for gun safety and Students Demand Action to do everything that we can to make sure that there are solutions. This is not just an act of Mother Nature. We actually can do some common sense things and take measures that will help to protect our communities. But this is absolutely devastating to hear that this happened today. But unfortunately, this is another day in America, and the way we're seeing our children go to school, walking through neighborhoods, it's just unacceptable.
Dr. Gupta, to have so many injured and all of them expected to live is a rare bright spot in, as I said, a lot of tragedies like this that I have covered. Just talk about it's pretty macabre, but because of the amount of shootings in America, a lot of the medicine has evolved to the point where someone can stand up today and say that all the victims are expected to survive. Just talk about what a day like today is like for the first responders at the hospital side.
Nicole, I would say that having talked to colleagues in Hennepin County that are at the hospital in which that was the main focal point, the level 1 trauma center in that region, I can say that in any situation, the local health system is reeling because there's a lot of moral injury that's happening, and certainly providers experience that. To what your prompt was, absolutely. I think there's a certain amount of luck here. The luck here is, it sounds like, I don't have full details on the weapon used, but there was a rifle of some variety, and that, to your point, generally causes a lot of damage really quickly. And the luck here is on where somebody gets hit. Where specifically on the body they get hit there's a randomness to it.
If now is not the time for action, when is the time? What's it going to take? Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. She represents the district that Annunciation is located in.
Welcome, Congresswoman. Condolences to the community and the families. Your leadership right now is important in this moment, not just because of what you can say or do legislatively, but having that presence there to show that as an elected official, you are on the ground with your folks and you appreciate this journey. I agree with the mayor. I'm not, the thoughts and prayers, I'm so beyond that nonsense, the lie of that. Because what we have are people who continue to stand in the way of actually doing something to stop the violence against their own kids. It is amazing to me. We watch young kids die in classrooms and now in church, and all we get are thoughts and prayers. What can you tell us about this community, and what's on your heart at this moment as you sort of wrap your head around yet again another national tragedy involving the killing of young kids?
Thank you all for having us. And I would say our community does, in many ways, appreciate the prayers and the support that we are getting, the outpouring of support. What I feel is the most tragic as a mother, as a member of this community, is that the fact that these, two angels were doing one of the most innocent things we want our kids to do, which is to sit in prayer. And they were assassinated by an assailant who did get access to a deadly weapon that did now shatter the lives of two, will forever impact the lives of 17 others. And will forever have a lasting impact, not just on our entire community, but the Catholic community within Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time they have felt targeted, and it is important for us to remember that these tragedies can be avoided. You know, we talked about thoughts and prayers and taking action when Columbine happened, back when I was in high school. We talked about the devastation of Sandy Hook when I was a young mom. And we are still talking about it. And I cannot imagine the heartbreak that these families must feel knowing that they had just dropped off their babies to go to school and to start their day praying. And to be called within moments after they had dropped their children off and be told that not only some of their children were dead, others were hospitalized, and their whole community and their lives will forever be changed. We have to take action.
Congresswoman, what does that action look like? The last time that there was a gun prevention bill was in 2022. President Biden signed that into law. It was bipartisan in nature. But this administration, just last month, it was reported in Reuters that the Trump administration slashed federal funding for gun violence prevention. I'm going to read something to you. The Trump administration has terminated more than half of all federal funding for gun violence prevention programs in the U.S., cutting $158 million in grants. A DOJ official told Reuters the gun violence grants were eliminated because they, quote, no longer effectuate the program's goals or agency's priorities. It feels like the federal government is not coming to save the children of America from things like this. It feels like on the state level, on the local level, something is going to have to change. People are going to have to be more creative to figure out how to stop these kinds of things. Do you agree with that?
I do, but we also have to understand that we live in a union. You know, in Minnesota, we have strong gun laws, but Indiana is not that far away from us. And so we have to recognize, as, you know, people who live in the United States, you know, a community like Minneapolis or just the state of Minnesota taking action does not prevent our neighbor from coming and harming one of our community members. And so we have to collectively think of ourselves as people who collectively reside in this country, who are impacted by the decisions that are, the lack of decisions or decisions that are made in different states, because we are in one country. And so there has to be federal laws that are introduced that safeguard life in this country. There, you know, Simone said something earlier that sits with me forever, which is, you know, we have this problem uniquely as a country, because the rest of the world, once they saw there might be a problem, once they got their first taste of that heartbreak of losing their children in a senseless way, they said no more, not again. And so in our country, in order for continuously make excuses on why we are not going to take a collective action on a federal level that collectively addresses this problem is beyond me. And I want the mothers, you know, in this country to rise up and to recognize that for the love of the Second Amendment, for the love of our gun culture, we have to have a greater love for our kids. We have to have a greater love for the safety of our community. Something has to prevail, because the rest of the world has decided that they love their children way more than they love their ability to have easy access to guns. And we have to get there as well.
You know, I was struck by a lot of the reactions from people, not just in Minneapolis and Minnesota today, but folks on cable news, folks all across the country. And I want to play for you something that Trey Gowdy actually had to say.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is, how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands. And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children. I mean, how many school shootings does it take?
It's a great question. I mean, but Trey Gowdy, and this isn't the first time he's spoken out about gun violence, particularly in school shootings, but he used to represent South Carolina's 4th Congressional District from 2011 to 2019. I don't recall him introducing legislation, federal legislation. I think that he is asking the right question. Apparently today was enough for Trey Gowdy. Is it enough for the rest of your Republican colleagues? How many more children have to die in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe Trey is correct in saying we have to ask these questions. And I don't actually think the choice has to be between freedom and love of our children and the protection of our children. I think there are ways in order for us to continue to have freedoms, but to wisely decide, there has to be some safeguards. We have freedoms in all other aspects, and we always create safeguards to make sure people are protected. And so I do believe that we have to put our past statements, our past views, in the rear view mirror, come together as a country, as lawmakers who make a decision on a federal level and collectively make a decision on something that makes sense, that keeps our children and our communities safe. I think we have done enough blaming each other, never really coming to the solution. But I think it is time for us to find a solution to make sure guns don't end up in the wrong hands. But also, yes, to what he was saying, there is somebody who knows something. So obviously, we need to also collectively think of our collective safety and decide, yes, it is time to call somebody. It is time to say something when you notice that there is some sort of red flag that is being presented. We see all of these YouTube videos that are later shown to people, or their social media presence, and people just kind of disregard it. If someone is posting something that is alarming to you, please, please, for the sake of our children, tell someone so that they can be alerted and there can be action taken before a life is lost.
Congresswoman, I could not agree more with not just the sentiment of what you just expressed, but the importance of it relative to public policy, because there's always been this space in which the character, the nature of the individual, the things that lead that individual to behave and act out the way they do, that's not been accounted for in the past. And yet there are people around that person who see this behavior, who should be alerted to it, and have the confidence and the ability to alert others. And that's very, very important. You can't necessarily legislate that. And I think that's part of what you're saying. So there is sort of the humanity of all of us that has to come forward in a moment like this, for sure. But even before now, here's where I have the problem when it comes to this issue as someone who's a gun owner and certainly been a supporter of the Second Amendment in the traditional political context, is that when your house is on fire, do you let it burn or do you call for help? And that's really what we're talking about here. We're watching our children burn in the fire, in the gunfire, in the hails of bullets that are shot at them. We're watching it in nightclubs. We're watching it in our schools. And yet we somehow don't want to call for help. Right now, how would you ask Congress to call for help and to be that help?
Yeah, I mean, I would say let's come together and figure out a solution. There are, compromises that can be made to both honor the freedoms that people want to have and to honor the lives that have been lost with real solutions to stop the loss of life going forward. I don't think protecting our children should be a partisan issue. And I don't think it is a partisan issue for us to say it is alarming for places where we send our children to get an education. Should not be a place where we worry if they get slaughtered. Places of worship where we want our little angels praying to God is a place where we want to see them get slaughtered. This, to me, sounds common sense.
Fresh outrage over use of the National Guard here. He says he will also consider deploying Guard troops to other cities and admitting he views this as a partisan project, that he will go to Democrat-run cities. He has mentioned Baltimore. Joining us now is Maryland Governor Wes Moore. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you. Let's start with what's happening here. Washington, obviously very close to where you govern. And the idea that, as the president says, he would do this on a partisan basis. What's your response?
Well, and first, I want to say to all the people in Minnesota that our hearts go out to you. I finished speaking with Governor Walz earlier on, and you know, he's having one of the toughest days that any of us can have as chief executive. So to him, to the entire Minnesota family, to all those families, we just want to let them know that everyone in Maryland is here with them and thinking of them, and they're in our hearts. You know, and I think it actually, you know, when I think about the president's comments that he literally made from the Oval Office yesterday, where he was talking about how this is a good political issue for them to use and utilize when it comes to the midterm elections. You know, one thing that is, and again, as we hear it, for all of us who had to live and exist in these communities that have been chronically neglected, who have had to live and exist and grow up in communities where we knew that our safety was not a concern. For people in very high perches and people who are in power, for people who knew they spoke about us and never having conversations with us, that unfortunately the comments of the President of the United States just validates what so many of us felt as we were coming up inside of those communities, that there actually is not a concern about our safety, that this is just a game. And it rings incredibly frustrating for those of us who actually are serious about this work. When I first came on board, you know, I remember the year before I became the governor in 2022, Baltimore City was averaging almost a homicide a day. That for the 8 years under my predecessor, we saw the homicide rate nearly double, the non-fatal shooting rate did double, and we came in with a completely new philosophy about the way we're going to address violence and public safety in our community, that we're going to work with local elected officials like the mayor and the state's attorney. And we made historic investments in local law enforcement, historic investments in technology, historic investments in the community. And it has produced not just encouraging results, but historic drops in violent crime in Baltimore City. It's because we actually take the work seriously. And we're not seeing that from the White House right now.
Understood that, and that goes to how you're approaching it locally within your authorities. When you look at what the president is suggesting, we have the list of many of the cities. It's hard not to notice how many are led by Black American leaders. Do you view this, and do you think there's enough evidence to suggest that this is part of the targeting and sort of a race-baiting fight that he wants?
Well, I think we are watching consistent trends that we have seen, so it kind of tracks with the President of the United States, and it's the reason why I actually invited him. And I said, come to Baltimore. Because, you know, especially when ignorant comments are made, the only way to address ignorance is education. So come and learn. Come and spend time in our communities. Come and spend time with community violence intervention groups like We Are Us, who are actually on the ground doing the work. Come and spend time with our local law enforcement who are on the beat. Come and spend time with the mayor and the state's attorney. And come see what we see as we walk our communities every single day. And of course, the response that I received from the President of the United States with his laughing crowd around him was just simply making a snide personal comment about me. And so it does become very frustrating when we actually know what can work. We know that instead of doing things like cutting $30 million of gun violence prevention, like the president has just done for the state of Maryland, that we know if he could do things like invest in license plate readers and actually pass federal legislation that bans ghost guns, things we have been calling for, but they have just scoffed off because they said bring in the National Guard to pick up litter is somehow a better strategy to fight crime inside of our society. We know that there is a better way, and we know that if we actually had a partner inside of Washington, we could demonstrate what a better way looks like to continue producing the kind of results that the people in our communities hope for.
You mentioned sort of his personal approach, and he's been on both sides of it, kind of attacking you, but then also invoking your support, which I guess it means if you did think highly of him, that would be a positive. That's usually why people invoke certain support. And again, some viewers may have heard about this. I got you on, so I'm going to ask. You have the headline: Trump falsely claims Governor Moore called him the greatest president. In terms of how lies work, it sounds like more of the way he talks and the way you talk. But I guess my question is to have you on record here. Was he lying? And what does it tell you that he would want people to think that you like him?
Yeah, we'll have breaking news on the show today. The president's lying.
Okay.
And I know that's shocking for a lot of voters to hear that. But actually what happened was when he first came up, the very first words out of his mouth was, he told me that I was a really good-looking guy, and I was really good-looking in person, too. And then he proceeded to say that my people are telling me that you're doing fantastic work. And he said, how can I help? And I started talking about the bridge. That I told him how a year and a half ago, how we had one of the most tragic moments in our state's history. And we've been able to really give a case study on how to respond in these moments of crisis, to move with speed, but also humanity. And I told him that we would really love his continued support. And it's ironic now that this is the week that he then decides that he wants to threaten us with taking away bridge financing, despite the fact that he never gave it to us in the first place.
Yeah, and we have that headline on the bridge financing. You know, Governor, it's funny. It's the way we live, right? That you're telling us that the president said to you, you're good-looking in person. It's just such a funny way for politicians to relate. I'm reminded of Jay Rock. You ever listen to Jay Rock?
Yes, of course.
Who said, don't hit me when I'm working. She said, I look way better in person. And Trump giving you that energy, and we're not refereeing it. We're just reporting it. So that's part of your relationship. Broadening out.
Well,
again,
it's kind of like it's kind of like Kendrick when I say to the president, "You don't tell lies about me, and I won't tell the truth about you."
Hey, on Not Like Us, which talk about how it all comes together. That line was popularized by Adlai Stevenson. An old school Democrat. So it's all full circle today. You know, I mentioned earlier in the program, I know you're not going to make any other news about politics, but it's no secret that Democrats are looking around. There's a view that maybe they want a strong governor figure who is standing up to this administration. And I don't think you're the only name, but it's no secret that you and Governor Newsom, maybe Pritzker, are some of the names we're seeing circulated. How do you take that? Can you answer this question without giving us the usual talking points? You know, you're honored but busy and focused on work. People are hungry for leadership. Democrats see a lot of D.C. leaders who they don't think are fighting hard enough or inventive enough. So walk us through how you see all that, knowing all the caveats that, of course, you're busy with your day job.
Well, no, what I say is, I mean, the people of my state, they need me now. And I'm locked in because these are not glancing blows that are coming to the state of Maryland. These are direct shots. When the President of the United States has now fired over 12,000 Marylanders who are federal workers, people who are doing things like making sure that our food is safe and making sure that our critical infrastructure is protected. When the President of the United States looks at historic floods taking place in Western Maryland, and when we put in for federal disaster relief support, which we qualified for, and we simply get a response from the White House saying support from Maryland is not warranted. When we get an FBI building that we worked for 10 years and across all quantitative levels to say should be going to the state of Maryland, and the President of the United States says the FBI building is not going to Maryland because it is a liberal state. Like the president, like we are being attacked by the federal government right now. And my people need to understand, and they know that, listen, I don't come from the world of politics. I'm a soldier, and I'm standing my guard. And we are locked in to make sure that our people will continue to grow and thrive and succeed in this moment, despite the fact that we're watching a federal government who seems to make my communities and our neighborhoods some kind of punchline, instead of understanding that when you're talking about the people of Baltimore, what you are forgetting is they're also Americans, too. And they hear you loud and clear.
Tonight, we're following breaking news out of the CDC where top officials are resigning en masse after sudden changes to COVID vaccine policies were announced earlier today. This afternoon, the FDA approved the COVID vaccine for the fall, but restricted who is eligible to receive it. In a reversal of longstanding policy, the FDA now says that the vaccine that has saved millions of lives in this country and around the world is only recommended for adults 65 and older, plus kids and adults with underlying health conditions. Now, this is the narrowest group of people granted access since the vaccines first became available. Remember that? Back in the early 2021, late 2020 period. Hours after that decision was announced, the Washington Post reported that Susan Menares, the director of the Centers for Disease Control, was ousted after just weeks on the job. She'd been Senate confirmed. Although, to be absolutely clear, her lawyers say she has not yet resigned, nor has been officially fired. Quoting from the Post, Menarez was ousted after she faced pressure to change vaccine policy. Several senior CDC officials announced their resignation shortly thereafter, plunging the public health agency into turmoil. Post says Menarez declined to sign off on changes to COVID vaccine policy without first consulting with her advisors. The Trump administration, in turn, accused her of disloyalty. In her resignation letter, one of Menarez's deputies wrote, quote, "For the good of the nation and the world, the science at CDC should never be censored or subject to political pauses or interpretations. Vaccines save lives. This is an indisputable, well-established scientific fact." The director of the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases also resigned tonight, writing, quote, "I am not able to serve in this role any longer because of the ongoing weaponizing of public health. CDC staff continue to shine despite this dark cloud over the agency and our profession." Javier Becerra served as the Secretary of HHS under President Biden, the position that RFK Jr. now holds. Brandy Zadrasny is an MSNBC reporter, senior reporter, and they join me now. Brandy, you have been covering the anti-vax movement and RFK for, I think, over a decade at this point. Today, the announcement felt like the culmination of what had been a decade of work and activism, this first step to retrench and limit who can get the COVID vaccine, and then to get this news. I mean, what do you make of what we have learned just in the past few hours?
Yeah, it seems like a dream realized for Secretary Kennedy. For a decade, he has been saying that he wants to dismantle CDC. Specifically, he has called CDC scientists Nazis. He has said that they abuse children like the Catholic Church priests abuse children. He has called them evil. Every name in the book, he has villainized these people. And after the shooting in August at CDC headquarters, he, said, my heart's with you, but couched a lot of his language. Now, alternately, the people who showed up at that meeting, at this all-hands meeting, was Susan Monterez and 3 of the people that also quit today, the center directors that quit today. So these are the people that were really holding the CDC together. These are the people that all of the scientists said, as long as these folks are still there, I can work. And I've been on the phone with a dozen people at the CDC right now, and they've told me things like, who is going to want to work at the CDC now? They said they don't trust the information that's going to come out of them, and they don't feel like there's any bulwark left. Someone said to me, there's no one left. And this feels like a very, very important moment where Kennedy has seemingly gotten rid of any limits on his power and his anti-vaccine obsession.
The Washington Post, Mr. Becerra, I want to read for you their reporting that Kennedy urged Menarez to resign for not supporting the Trump's agenda. She declined to immediately resign. She enlisted Senator Bill Cassidy, chairman of the Health Committee, who cast a pivotal vote for Kennedy's confirmation for help. Cassidy privately pushed back on Kennedy's demands. And now we have the HHS announcing that she's no longer director of CDC. Thank her for a dedicated service. And then a statement from her attorney saying she refused to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives and fire dedicated health experts she chose, protecting the public over serving a political agenda. She's been targeted as a person of integrity and devoted to science. She will not resign. Have you ever seen anything like this at this agency?
I don't think any of us ever seen something like this at this agency. But remember that this is not an agency that deals with widgets. This is an agency that deals with health and life. And when the CDC doesn't get it right, a lot of people die. And when you lose your brain talent, a lot of people are going to die. I don't know how else to put it. I know the 3 people who have now resigned. They were all essential during the COVID fight. Dr. Daskalauskas was the point person on Mpox, monkeypox. Deb Hurry would constantly be providing us with great guidance on where we needed to go on so many different issues involving disease. You just don't get rid of people like that and say you're going to replace them. It's I don't get it. It doesn't make sense, and America's going to feel the pain.
I mean, it does seem to me, Brandy, like that, again, based on what we can tell from the public reporting and from the statements put out by these people, talking about weaponization of health, that basically there was a decision made at the highest political level to restrict the COVID vaccine because that was something that had been promised. because that is an ideological axe that Kennedy's been grinding. It's part of Trump's coalition. And that the scientists said there's no scientific reason to do that, and that's what brought us to where we are now.
It certainly seems that way. I think what I've been told is that we'll hear more from these folks who have resigned in the coming days. So it'll be interesting to hear what exactly pushed them out, specifically beyond their general complaints that they stated very clearly that he is a threat to public health, that he doesn't listen to the science. We just really have to wait and see. But I will say that there's something, I think there is a glimmer of hope in here, if I can be so bold to offer some. And it's that these 3 and maybe more resignations that came in the letters that came with it, this is a coordinated effort from some very, very intelligent, dedicated to public health folks. And so they have done this seemingly together and coordinated with each other. And I don't think we've seen the last of them. The people that I talked to that worked for them are certainly hoping that's the case. That's the hope that they're sort of clinging to at this moment.
Let me, Mr. Becerra, let me read you an excerpt from one of those letters. Again, this coordinated letters. And then I want to ask you for some advice to people that might be watching. I am unable to serve in an environment that treats CDC as a tool to generate policies. This is the doctor you just talked about, Dimitri Deskalaskis. Serve an environment that treats CDC as a tool to generate policies and materials that do not reflect scientific reality and are designed to hurt rather than improve the public's health. The recent change in the adult and children's immunization schedule threatens the lives of the youngest Americans and pregnant people. To the people that might be watching this, that work at CDC, and I think we probably have some, what advice would you give them about hanging in there and holding their ground amidst this?
So first, I tell the American people, be afraid when you see a professional, a scientist, say those words publicly, because these are people who are accustomed to keeping their eye on the prize and not trying to make news. Yeah. So that's one thing. Secondly, to each and every one of them, thank you for your courage. Thank you for your service. And pray to the Lord that we figure out how to replace you, because something will come around the corner, whether it's COVID, whether it's avian flu, and we need the experts. You never take your child to a politician when your child is ill. You don't take even your car to a politician if you need to get it repaired. We right now are losing our best scientists, and this is only because of politics. And you're not going to take your biggest healthcare issues to a politician to get them resolved. We're in trouble. This is deep doo-doo, and it's all a man-made disaster. Get ready. This is about saving lives.
Former Secretary of Health and Human Services Javier Becerra and Brandy Zadrozny of MSNBC. Thank you both. It is a dark timeline out there, people. I don't have to tell you that. It's also a comically absurd one. This is a video obtained yesterday of some of those soldiers on DC trash patrol. With no crimes to fight, no protests to break, they are picking up garbage around monuments in the Capitol wearing reflective safety vests over their camouflage working uniforms. Now, if you've spent any time with service members, especially veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan, you know about their hatred of this safety gear. Ask any Army vet how they feel about the standard issue item, formerly known as the belt, high visibility. It is an object of ridicule and endless memes for exactly the same reason that this video of those service members on trash patrol strikes a funny chord, right? Soldiers wear camouflage to conceal themselves from the enemy they want to kill. Safety vests are what municipal workers put on so you can see them at work. And what you are seeing in front of your eyes is the cognitive dissonance of soldiers doing the work of a municipal crew in a supposedly crime-ridden major American city. It is odds with their training and bizarre on many levels, not least of which is the fact that Trump's Secretary of Defense keeps saying that troops should be warriors and killers and do less stuff that isn't lethal.
Basics. And one of those basics is the warrior ethos.
We're restoring the warrior ethos.
My job is to revive the warrior ethos inside the military, get back to basics. That's what Donald Trump asked me to do. Your job is to bring a warfighting ethos back to the Pentagon. Your job is to make sure that it's lethality, lethality, lethality. Everything else is gone. Everything else that distracts from that shouldn't be happening.
Is that what's happening in D.C.? Is this Pete Hegseth's warrior ethos? Also, lethality, then should we be deploying those people against Americans? They mobilized 2,200 National Guard soldiers from as far away as Louisiana, by the way, who have lives and jobs, to come to Washington and do the work of the National Park Service. As the Washington Post reports, ostensibly they were mobilized to support federal law enforcement and local police, but in recent days those orders have expanded to encompass beautification tasks such as trash removal and groundskeeping around the National Mall and other federal properties. Service members may work on removing graffiti too. So lethality, warrior ethos, mulch. Now, typically, the Washington Post says this kind of work falls to the National Park Service, which would make sense, and was already understaffed when Trump and the so-called DOJ efficiency project purged them this spring. That service, listen to this, listen to these numbers, used to have 200 people assigned to maintain thousands of acres and trees and gardens in D.C. There are now 20, a Park Service official told the Post. 20 people, 90% cut. They cut all those national park jobs for no reason. They never saved any money. They did the same in tons of agencies, including the IRS, when they then had to hire a bunch of people back. We'll see if that works. They're mired in lawsuits with thousands of other workers they illegally fired. Whole thing was a complete failure on its face. And now we have reached the inevitable point of American decline where we have our men and women in uniform with safety vests picking up trash because the civil servants who actually performed those functions were fired by the billionaire oligarch that Trump briefly deputized before their falling out. It's as dystopian as it is comical and insulting. The aim here isn't just replacing the federal workforce, though, with part-time soldiers. The Trump administration is very clearly trying to get people accustomed to the idea of troops. Again, warriors, people trained to be lethal, to fight America's enemies, roaming American streets, where that lethality is trained on us, beneath enormous portraits of the dear leader. And many Americans are noticing. And they are not happy with the state of affairs. In polls and protests and town halls, regular people are standing up for the freedoms they cherish about this country. I mean, you see it everywhere you look. Every day there's an example. You see it in elected officials like New York Controller Brad Lander when he physically put himself between migrants and the masked federal agents trying to disappear them. You hear it every day in the countless viral videos of bystanders, just normal people shouting down ICE raids, recording officers, protecting their neighbors. You're seeing it in, let's call it untraditional protests, like that of the so-called sandwich guy who chucked a hero at one of those armed federal agents on the street in Washington 2 weeks ago. Today, that man, an Air Force veteran who served in Afghanistan, walked free after a grand jury declined to indict him on federal felony assault charges. We'll have more on that story later in the show. So, all around the country, in every nook and cranny, in red states and blues, in big cities and small towns, and in ways small and large, civil servants and everyday people are rebelling against the idea of being under the watchful eye of a state security apparatus and soldiers in camouflage with long guns who are being, by the way, exploited by the aspiring autocrat in the Oval Office. Because, as you see, as people walk down the street nonviolently chanting, ICE go home, Americans are a free people. We have a birthright to that freedom that we've worked for and fought for hundreds of years, and we are not going to give it away to Donald Trump.